So, welcome everyone, and thank you for inviting me to come to this what do we call it? Meditation Center online meeting. And I'll just introduce myself firstly. I'm Malcolm. I live in Lismore, Northern New South Wales. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm also, I guess, I'm a Dharma teacher as well. I've been practicing some sort of Buddhist meditation since 1975. So I'm an old hand. I don't pretend to be enlightened, but I've been around the traps quite a few years, so I have some familiarity with various approaches. I was a Buddhist monk for a couple of years, or almost 2 years, in Thailand in the late 70s. And I've practiced mostly within the Theravadan tradition, but I've also practiced within the Mahayana tradition and also the Zen tradition. So that's a bit of me. And if you're wondering what this is indicating on my forehead, it's not my third eye bursting out. It's actually a basal cell carcinoma that was cut out on Tuesday last week, and I've still got stitches in there, so they'll come out in a little while. And that brings me to the topic of today's Dharma talk. And I'm just checking, first of all, we'd like me to give a Dharma talk for about half an hour. Is that right? 30 minutes, something like that?
Yes, yes.
And then we have a meditation for about 20 minutes. And then we have about 10 minutes of 10 minutes of questions and discussions and insights and so on that people would like to share. So the topic of tonight's Dharma talk, which Summer asked me to give, or she suggested it, is about the 5 recollections. And I'm kind of leading into these 5 recollections, pointing to my wound up on my forehead, my basal cell carcinoma. And right now I'm getting quite old. I'm 69 in a couple of weeks, which is not too old, but it's getting there. And it brings to mind the fact that we're aging. That brings to mind a direct perception of impermanence. I'll talk about how I first began doing the 5 recollections in a few minutes, but this idea of impermanence is the theme of the Buddhist teachings. Actually, it's an understanding, part of insight practice, for example, insight meditation practice, is the direct realization of, it's cultivating right view, actually. And right view is seeing things as impermanent, seeing things as not self, and seeing things as unable to bring enduring happiness. In other words, anicca, anicca means impermanence, dukkha, which means unsatisfactoriness or suffering, sometimes it's translated, but it's probably better understood as unsatisfactoriness. And anatta, which means not self here, meaning that there's no single thing in all this. In life, there is no single thing. It is a combination of everything is a combination of causes and conditions coming together, arising and changing. And there is a lovely description of dependent arising that one of my teachers, Lee Brasington, has described, and it's called. He talks about dependent arising, which is the principle on which the Buddha explained how things come to be, and how they also cease. Is the way he's describing this is streams of dependently arising processes interacting. It's this understanding that there is no solid thing in all of this. So, what happens in our human existence, however, is that we tend to have wrong view. We tend to have a view that we tend to hold on to this view that uh, things are permanent. It's really quite strong. We hold on to this idea that things are permanent and lasting. And we hold on to the view that there is a self somewhere in all of this. There is a solid core in all of this experience of life, but there isn't. Um, and we also hold on to the view that conditioned things that arise and pass away, things that are impermanent, things that we cannot hold on to call a self or ourselves, things that we can't own, um, are actually a source of genuine happiness. So it's the wrong view is the opposite of seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta. Um, Another thing about right view um, is that it sees that things are dependently arising, depending on causes and conditions. It sees that it understands this uh, interdependence, without, for want of a better word, of life. It sees that things are the way they are. There is just this. Things don't necessarily fall into the way we want them to be or the way we think they should be. They are just as they are. So I'm talking about this because the five recollections are a way for us to tune into the reality of impermanence. It's a way for us to kind of uh, weaken that view that things last. It's kind of a delusion, in fact. We think that we're lasting. And I mean, I talk about my house and I talk about my partner's. I'm in my a hut at the back of my house. My partner's in the house watching TV. And, I think that, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and so on and so forth. There's this kind of solid view that I'm a lasting thing and there'll be tomorrow and so on and so forth. But the reality of it is we are uncertain. The reality of it is that we're really, really impermanent. Um, so the five recollections are these. I'm of the nature to age. I have not got beyond aging. I'm of the nature to have illness or disease. Uh, I've not got beyond illness. I'm of the nature to die. I have not got beyond death. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, shall one day be parted from me, shall one day vanish. And this is the last recollection. I'm the owner. I'm the owner of my actions. And really, when I learned this, I used to say, I am the owner of my kamma. I'm the owner of my karma. Um, but karma means actions anyway. So, and when I talk to my clients, or when I talk to people that don't understand Pali, for example, I'll be using the term action. So I'm the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related to my actions, abide supported by my actions. Whatever actions I shall do, of those actions I shall be the heir. So this is the five. These are the five recollections. They serve for us to kind of weaken wrong view. They serve for us to strengthen the perception of reality as it actually is. This is the way it really is. Um, we're getting old. I mean, I look at some of you, and some of you are young, like young compared to me. Some of you may be the same age as me, or maybe some of you are even older than me. I'm not sure. Um, but it's a reality that everything changes, everything is impermanent. And The other thing about this reality is that it's kind of delusional to think that even though we can have all the vitamins in the world and have all the proper health diets and live a healthy life, that we're not subject to illness. I mean, it's just delusional, really. I know we can live a healthy life and we can maintain a healthy lifestyle. I mean, I'm not pretending just because we're subject to illness that we should go out and eat macas and have lots of greasy, unhealthy food and so on. But I haven't met anybody who hasn't been ill because our bodies change. They're prone to have something go wrong. This year, I mean, it's just been, for me, it's been one thing after another. And, I had COVID early in the year. I caught it off one of my grandchildren who, the grandchildren was in hospital. He has cystic fibrosis. So he had a break from hospital and I was nursing him and I just got COVID. Yeah. So I had COVID and then not long after I had shingles. I was really stressed. So I got shingles. And then I was I'm recording a program in a studio, and I had to bring my computer home and a bit of the recording studio equipment on my back on my push bike. So I had a rucksack, and I was riding up my hill on the push bike, and I did my hip in. So my hip was sore; I couldn't hardly walk. And then a bit later, last year, late last year, I started to have this. I had problems with my teeth, and I had whenever I drank something hot, my teeth would ache. So I ended up going to the dentist, and she said, "Oh yes," he gave me a pamphlet on cracked teeth syndrome. And I was talking to a friend dentist of mine recently, and she said, "I mean, when I was a kid, I had lots of fillings because my mother used to feed us sugary tea in the mornings. We had two spoonfuls of sugar in our tea. So anyway, we've got these lots of fillings with amalgam in them like this. And back in those days, the fillings would hold the teeth together. But as the fillings have grown older and older and older, the teeth are holding the fillings together. And they're weak. So if you munch on something solid like nuts, like I do, and bite hard, the teeth are prone to cracking. So I had cracked teeth. And something funny about this, I ended up getting a silver band. It's called a band, but it's a temporary crown to give it an experiment to, what you're doing. And when I went away to be with my grandkids and children over Christmas, I'd be kind of going, ha, 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 ha. And one of the kids who was not one of my grandchildren, but a cousin of one of my grandchildren, came up to me. He's about 4.5 years old. He said, "Have you really got a gold tooth?" And I said, and somebody said, "He's a pirate." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a pirate." Arr, arr, arr. And you can see there's gold tooth. What I'm getting at is that the body breaks down. The body breaks down. And it's really, really helpful to come to terms with it. Uh, you can come to terms with it by trying to fix it up and repair it. Like I'll probably have to get a crown at least, or maybe, depends on how I go with the prosthodontist. I might get root canal work, and worst case scenario, I'm going to get a tooth implant, which is doubly painful because they cost quite a lot of money, and you don't claim them on Medicare. Anyway, that's the way it goes. So I'm of the nature to age, and because I'm aging, also of the nature to have disease or illness. The other one is that I'm of the nature to die. And that recollection is a valuable recollection. It's really, really helpful. One of the surefire ways and the most powerful ways to recognize impermanence is to realize and understand our mortality. There is a book called Staring at the Sun. It's by Yalom, who's a psychotherapist. He's a It's a wonderful book, although I haven't read it fully, but it gives the example. Um, well, it's actually a book about death anxiety. He's a psychotherapist and he's talking about death anxiety. And it's called Staring into the Sun. And it's difficult for us to stare into the sun. That's the same as for us to contemplate death. It's difficult for us to contemplate death. And we have all sorts of strategies to get around this. These are called terror management strategies. Terror management, I think there's a theory about that. And we either think, not me, and it doesn't happen to me, it happens to everyone else. I know intellectually we say, oh, yeah, I'm going to die. But really deeply, we go, we just can't fathom it. And if it's not going to happen, the other strategy we have is not now, it's sometime in the future, you know, sometime in the future. So far off that it's not worth thinking about right now. But the reality is that death is going to happen. It's probably that and taxes, they say, are the only things we can be certain of. Uh, it will happen. And it's really useful to contemplate this. It's really useful to stop and reflect. Yes, I will die. The time I die is uncertain, but the reality of dying is certain, absolutely certain. And these recollections are kind of sobering. They're kind of because we're quite intoxicated with life. We just kind of go along day after day. I get up every morning and I make a cup of tea and I come and meditate and I might have some breakfast some days and some days I don't have breakfast. We just go on along with life and we think that everything's kind of rolling out as we expect it. But one day it's going to come to an end. Uh, this is the reality of things. It's We're intoxicated with life. We're we're blinded to it. We're blinded by our views to not see the way things are. The next recollection, the fourth recollection, which is all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, shall one day be parted from me, shall one day vanish. That's absolutely true. I was watching the news last night, I think it was, and I was seeing the horror in California, the houses being lost. And it's just unbelievable. I'm in Lismore, and I lived a disaster. I lived through a disaster in 2022. We had the flooding, and that was a shock. It was just so. Uh, it's really powerful to be in a disaster, and there were, people died in Lismore as a result of the flooding. And I'd walk down my road. I live on Gerrards Hill, which is high, of course. The damage we had to our house was from storm damage, but just 50 meters down the hill, not even that, about 30 meters down my hill, houses were inundated with flooding. Uh, some houses were completely covered with water. And there were flood refugees being paddled in on boats and all the rest of it. So I was looking at these fires on the result of the fires, and whole suburbs, hundreds of houses have disappeared. And there's the people standing in their houses that once were there, and they've lost everything. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, shall one day be parted from me, shall one day vanish. I have that recollection sometimes when I hop into bed, and my partner, my beautiful partner, who uh, we've never got married, but we've been together. We have a child together. We've been together about 35, 38 years or something like that, 37 years, something like that. And she's usually asleep before as I'm getting into bed. And I look at her and I think, one day either she or I will die and we will be parted. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, shall one day be parted. One day my house will be non-existent. I'm fortunate it's survived all sorts of things. I'm going to, one day this computer, my computer, that's a screen there, but my computer's over there. Uh, One day this computer will be disappeared. One day I'll have no vehicle. One day everything will be gone. If not before I die, especially when I die. So this is a useful recollection to have. It's a useful reflection. And the last one, last recollection is of, it's actually the phrases they use to cultivate equanimity. Now, equanimity is a very interesting quality. There's different types of equanimity. Equanimity generally means a kind of balanced state of mind, an unshakable mind, a balanced mind. It's in Pali, it's upekkha, and it means to kind of sit back and see things from a view. To sit back and say, I like to draw the analogy of someone sitting on a mountain looking over an ancient battle, and you're not caught up in the battle, but you can see what's happening from a view. Equanimity, there's different types of equanimity. One type of equanimity is the stillness and silence of deep states of samadhi or jhanas. Another type of equanimity is equanimity as a practice. And this is equanimity as a divine abode, where you cultivate this quality and then you radiate it out as a state. And not only do you radiate it out, but it becomes a boundless state of the heart. It's a boundless, I guess some ways you could describe boundlessness as like a non-dual state. I mean, in Theravadan Buddhism, they don't use that term non-dual, but I know they do in Mahayana Buddhism. It's this non-dual state. And yet another way of understanding equanimity is the equanimity of conditions. And equanimity of conditions is a result of insight meditation. You see how things are arising and passing, how things are changing, that things arise because of a cause. Like with dependent arising, as I mentioned earlier, one saying about dependent arising is, and I hope I can quote it correctly, one way they describe dependent arising in the sutras, dependent arising is quite complex, actually. It's quite complicated and profound. But one way it's expressed in the sutras regularly is like this. When this is, that is. With the arising of this, that arises. When this is not, that is not. With the ceasing of this, that ceases. So dependent arising is the principle by which the Buddha explained how things come to be, and also how they cease. But dependent arising is also this understanding that there's no thing in all this, and that things arise because of causes and conditions. In other words, the way we are comes about because of a cause. And we could say that what we do has an effect. The way we are, and I'm going to quote Patrick Carney. I know you know Patrick because I saw him on your website. Patrick and I, old friends, dear old friends. Patrick once, I was doing a workshop with Patrick once, and he said, we are what we have done and we will be what we do, which is really a lovely way of describing this understanding that actions have consequences. So when we talk about this last recollection, what we're talking about is actually karma, the reality of karma, and the reality, and we're aiming, what we're inclining towards is equanimity of conditions. That sense of being unshaken by the way things are, the sense of seeing the way things are and not taking them personally, because there's nobody to take personally these conditions. It's just not there. So these 5 recollections of the 5th recollection goes, like I said before, I am the owner of my actions. I'm heir to my actions. I'm born of my actions. I'm related to my actions. I abide supported by my actions. Whatever actions I shall do, of those actions I shall be the heir. And this pertains to other beings as well. You know, all beings are the owners of their actions, born of their actions, related to their actions, abide supported by their actions. Whatever actions they shall do, of those actions they shall be the heir. I remember Thich Nhat Hanh, sorry, I'm just admitting someone. Thich Nhat Hanh once spoke about these 5 recollections and the reality of actions having consequences. That in this way, he said, our actions are our true possessions. They are all that we can own. They are, you know, we can't take anything with us except our actions. When we die, if we do have a kind of a continuity after death, it's like we're projected into that continuity. I'm not saying it correctly. Continuity. Sorry, that's the better way of saying it. We're projected into that continuity from the force of our actions, from our karma, if that makes sense. So I've just related the 5 recollections, and it's coming to 7:30 in my part of the world, so it must be about 6:30 in Queensland. And I forgot something. I forgot to pay homage to the Buddha at the beginning of my short Dharma talk. So I'm going to pay homage to the Buddha right now. And I'm also going to, what I usually do on when I give Dharma talks is take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll make that the finish of this Dharma talk. I hope it's been helpful. So, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. So one last note. The Buddha recommended everyone, both lay and monastic, to recollect these 5 recollections, or to reflect on these 5 recollections daily. So I'm going to leave this Dharma talk at that. So thank you very much for your attention, and let's have a moment of silence, and I'll guide you into a meditation on a reflective meditation on the 5 recollections, if you wish to come with me.